Well, quite some moment there as the King and the Queen took the cheers and the salute from the assembled military personnel before them. And Catherine, we very rudely cut you off with that appearance. Sorry.
I think
you were in the middle
the King cut me off.
Yeah, I know. How dare he? But you were right in the middle of a very interesting thought. So please finish it.
Well, it was also about who was in the congregation there. So you did see those different elements. You saw the show business that actually he loves. You know, it's not Ant and Dec weren't just there because they helped him with the Prince's Trust, which is his life's work. But you saw Maggie Smith. You saw he loves the company of actors. So you saw that reflected. So, you know, when I was talking about it being Shakespearean, there were all these different elements, but there was, which Adja referred to, also that sense of human frailty and vulnerability right in the middle of that. And also you cannot get away from the religiosity of what we have just witnessed. You know, as people try and unpick what today was about, there needn't have been a coronation in that sense. He was already king. But what this was about was seeing that moment, not only of the crowning, but of the anointing of that divine endorsement, if you like. And that for him, of course, he is just so much more religious and so much more engaged with all of this than his mother was, than any other member of his family. But I mean, you saw just there, he's also now beginning to relax and have a good time. You saw, I mean...
He's definitely smiling, that's for sure.
Somebody who knows him very well described him to me as an April day, and I think, if I may, this is a May version of an April day. You know, showers one minute, sun breaking through the next, and you just saw some of that sun beginning to emerge.
We should mention from some of the imagery that you'll be seeing is that the crowds are now being released onto the Mall. I think in a moment or two we'll be able to speak to our correspondent who's amongst them. Nina.
Yeah, hi, we're just waiting for our release, actually. Look, the crowd here has battled the elements, but the crowd really didn't care. It was raindrops on raindrops for the entirety of the service, but it did stop raining for the coronation procession. The day is yet young, but what's been your highlight so far, just as we head out?
Well, it's been fantastic. My daughter and I have come down from Sidcup in Kent, and we wouldn't have missed it for the world. Absolutely fantastic.
We're on the move, so I don't want to disturb you.
Seeing the gold coach was just superb.
What about for you?
Oh, it's such a momentous occasion. It's been fantastic.
So this is quite a moment in terms of you're heading up to the palace. What do you make of what you've seen?
She loves it.
Fantastic. You can see the camera.
Fantastic. It's been an amazing day. Great atmosphere, great views, the military. Yeah.
Where have you travelled from?
West Sussex, but our friends come from California. So
fantastic.
For it, so.
You have come, if I can just bring you into the front of the camera, all the way from Australia with your sister. Sorry that the weather didn't deliver for you, but what about the coronation procession?
It's been such an amazing experience to be here and watch it all in person. The vibe's been so amazing. So I don't think the rain's really impacted much on us. It's been quite light. So yeah. Quite happy.
What will you go back and say to your fellow Australians about how we put on a procession and a parade?
It was a great show. If you have a chance, come and see the next coronation, for sure, in person.
This, of course, was a first coronation for so many people.
Yeah, sure.
So that's a moment that you will never forget.
Correct. It's a historic moment. It's something that's happened after 70 years, so I'll definitely take it away with me.
Okay, we better get you moving so you can get up to Buckingham Palace. We'll come back to us in a little bit, and then we'll be a bit closer to the palace. That might be a good idea.
Watch your step here.
Okay, Nina, that's brilliant. On the move already, running away, as we saw. Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much. But for all that the vast majority of people here are clearly here to soak up the atmosphere and see the King and Queen, there have been protesters too. And we've just got some pictures we're going to show you now of those protests. Somewhat more controversial than the protest has been the fact that, as we understand, that the head of Republic, of course the leading Republican organisation, was actually arrested, allegedly for just taking some placards out the back of a car.
Would you like to
Yes.
I mean, the coronations are always crunchy moments, aren't they, historically? But this is a significant point that we need to discuss today.
This is an inflection point. I mean, although we have seen the coronation go off without hitch, the arrest of protesters, for one thing, is just, it shouldn't have happened. Peaceful protest is a very important right which is being eroded. But much more to the point, the monarchy is in crisis. It is in a transition point. Opinion polls show a shift. Now, although there is still a majority in favour of the monarchy, and although Charles himself and Queen Camilla have popularity ratings that politicians would kill for, they are nonetheless, and we're hearing cheering just to underpin that point, this is not the way the whole population looks at it. Typically, it has been said that republicanism never got bigger than 25%. Actually, among younger people, it's much, much higher than that. Among people of colour, it's much higher than that. And it's really important on a day that is supposed to reflect the United Kingdom, and by the way, also the 14 other realms and the Commonwealth, to reflect that opinion, to let that protest be seen and heard. So, but you know, it's really, this is a very polarized era, and one of the other things about that polarization, you see it in the polling. So when you drill down, this should not be a complacent monarchy. This is a monarchy that can no longer rely on unalloyed popularity, and where there's a shift going on.
Catherine, thank you for that. We can rejoin Nina, who's in that crowd somewhere. Nina.
Well, this is so very British, isn't it? Dodging the puddles and the horse manure and everyone legging it to Buckingham Palace. What do you make of this bit of the day, ladies?
Oh, brilliant.
Amazing. It's a bit of a dash going down it.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the speed everyone's going.
It's a bit fast.
It's a bit fast for me. It's a bit like running the marathon. Why are you dashing up the Mall?
See if we can get a glimpse of the King.
Is that going to be the highlight for you?
The fly past. That'll be the highlight.
Yeah. What happens, ladies, because we still don't know if that fly past, given what we're seeing right now, well, it's still on for now, but what happens if it doesn't happen?
We've still had an amazing day.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing day.
And my daughter's rung the bells at a church just for the King as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. What's been the highlight for you so far?
Ringing the bells. Got to be.
What an amazing achievement.
Yes, fantastic. We were here 21 years ago for the Queen's Golden Jubilee as well, so it's good to be back.
I'll let you head off. Let me speak to these people over here.
Hello. Hi, Grandma.
How old are you?
21.
21. And what have you made of your first coronation?
Great. We saw the carriage. I loved it.
What about the rain? Are you bothered about that?
No, not at all. We didn't mind getting wet. It was worth it.
What about the fact that so many people had to watch the service on their phones rather than being able to see it on a television? Was that okay?
The atmosphere was just wonderful though, and you could hear it, so it didn't really matter in that sense. And it's on video, we'll watch it tomorrow.
And what about the moment when the King went past?
Oh, it was lovely. We were supporting her so she could.
Yeah, I stood up to get a video.
They held me up.
She was the youngest, so we thought it was most important that she get the good view.
And this is a memory you're going to take with you forever, right?
Yeah, that's why I came, because it's something in history, really.
You're filming me, so I need to film you. Come over here, young man.
How are you? How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? How's the day been for you so far?
Absolutely brilliant. No regrets at all. Brilliant time. God save the King. That's it. We're out here, man, in London. Brilliant.
You could have been anywhere today. Why did you choose to come down to the Mall?
It's a historical event. What can we do? We have to do it. You know, only once in a lifetime. Once in a lifetime. Massive opportunity. Brilliant.
Let's say hello to everyone watching
That's it, man.
On your phone. Fantastic.
Which news channel?
We're on ITV. We're live on ITV as we
live
speak.
on ITV.
Live on ITV.
From Brazil.
A gentleman from Brazil. Why are you here today, sir?
To see the King.
Fantastic. Well, we're just coming to a bit of a stall in the process, so this might be a good time to say abianto.
Well, we're loving it, Nina. The running, the rain. It's spectacularly British day all round.
We're looking forward to seeing you, Nina, because we're going to keep an eye over our right shoulders. And gosh, what a shot that is of the crowds as they move along the Mall, flanked by the flags of the Commonwealth, the Union flags, and lots of umbrellas.
Where would today be without the Mall, though? You realise what an incredible kind of thing it is, and the way it's used first for the parade and then for the crowds to kind of come in for the balcony appearance. It really does lend itself perfectly to this kind of spectacle.
Now, we've just had a little bit of news in about the fly past, which has been curtailed a little because of the weather. We're just learning that the fly past will now consist of the helicopters, which were always due to be at the vanguard, plus the red arrows, which very many people will be delighted to hear we will still see. And we can cross now to Rachel Younger, who's at RAF Waddington. Rachel, what's the news from there?
Well, you'll probably be able to see there are 2 fast jets still on the tarmac behind me. The good news is that they are the spares, and at precisely 10 to 2, so just as the King and Queen were arriving at the palace here at RAF Waddington, 100 miles north, the red arrows were taxiing onto the runway here. Now, they didn't know at that point whether or not they would still be able to take part in this fly past. I just caught a few words with squadron leader Tom Bold, who said the forecast is really cuspy, but they were still optimistic. There were some waves, smiles as they taxied out onto that runway. They then took off in perfect formation, 3 sets of 3. Textbook ascent up into the skies. Each of those planes immaculately polished to within an inch of its life. But it was only when they'd been in the air for about 5 minutes. So they head from here in Lincolnshire across to the North Sea, and then they hug the East Anglian coastline down to Norwich before turning inland towards Essex. It was only then that they were told that they would still be able to fly over the palace, along with the helicopters you mentioned there, the Apaches, the Chinooks. We always knew that some of the older planes, the Lancasters, were particularly vulnerable to bad weather. But even for the red arrows, there needed to be a certain degree of good weather. They needed to have cloud cover of at least 1,000 foot. It couldn't be any lower than that. And also, of course, when you're flying in such precise, tight formation, they also had to have enough visibility to see each other. But let me tell you, there will have been some huge sighs of relief. They've been biting their nails all morning, looking at the skies, and they took off into some pretty heavy grey cloud. But of course, it's such an iconic moment, isn't it, when the red, white and blue streams out from behind those Hawk jets. And it's not just a moment in history for the crowds down beneath on the Mall. It's also for the men, and they are all men this time, inside the planes themselves. I was speaking to one of the engineers who told me that this was his very last year in the RAF, but the first opportunity he's had to fly over Buckingham Palace. He has his young daughter here watching when they took off. He was desperate to be able to do this, so proud of their role, as they are, the Red Arrows, who call themselves the best of British. So they will be absolutely delighted as they head across the country towards Essex now that they will be able to do that. They were only formed in the 1960s, so although we're used, aren't we, to seeing them fly over the top of the palace for celebrations like the Jubilees, this will be the first time ever that they're able to perform a fly past for the coronation.
Okay, Rachel, thank you very much. Well, there's the scene on the Mall, brollies and bobbies, I think it's fair to say. Nina is right at the heart of it, presumably still moving.
We are back on the move. I have to say, this really feels like, for everybody who's camped for days and days and days here, and those that got up really early to be here this morning, this is the magical moment. This is the bit that they will never, ever, ever, ever forget. You're from California.
Yes, Laguna Niguel, California.
What do you make of this bizarre British tradition to walk in the rain up the mountain?
I really am enjoying it. Charles and I were both born in the same year, 1948, and my mother and the Queen were both born in 27. So I've kind of followed him all his life, and I just didn't want to miss this. Really enjoying it.
What do you think his day's been like so far?
Very hectic, because mine has been a very hectic day. Got up at like 5 in the morning, took a cab, and still had to walk 2 or 3 miles, but it was well worth it.
What's been the highlight for you so far?
London, the fish and chips.
I hope you had mushy peas.
Yes, mushy peas are in there too.
I'm going to let you walk ahead so that you can get a good spot for the
Okay.
balcony and you can see the King and Queen.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
I'm from California too.
They're all American. I'm surrounded by Americans.
Yes.
What sort of day are you having? This is your first
Fabulous.
coronation, I'm sure.
First coronation, but my late husband was here in 1953 for the Queen's coronation, and so I'm here with his daughters and having a wonderful time.
Okay, daughters.
Daughters, where
are you?
my
It was
daughters. Okay, these are my British daughters, my British stepdaughters, right here.
Are you enjoying this? I've just described it as a magical moment,
Oh, it's lovely.
walking in the rain.
It's just magical. I can't wait to see the fly past. Yeah, it's brilliant. Really good.
And this is your daughter, is it?
My niece.
Your niece. What's your name?
Saren.
I'm loving your face paint. Are you loving the day?
Yeah, I'm liking it.
Despite the rain, it's lovely.
Despite the rain. What's been your favourite bit so far?
Well, I like seeing the king in the carriage on the way.
Were you close enough? Because a lot of people had to watch all that through their phones because there were 4 or 5 people back. Were you close enough to see the king himself?
Yeah, well, I was quite close. Yeah, I was. So.
Did you get a wave from King Charles III?
Yes.
Excellent. I mean, that's a fantastic result, isn't it? I need to speak to you with your. Are you getting? It's a very modern coronation, isn't it? Everybody is filming everything. What sort of day have you had so far?
Absolutely fantastic. Beautiful. Wonderful day.
Your beautiful glasses are covered in rain.
Yes.
It hasn't dampened your spirits.
Not a bit. Good English weather.
Good English weather, yeah. It was forecast and we got what was forecast. What about you? What are you thinking of?
Yeah, it's really good. It's been good so far. It's been very rainy and yeah.
And where have you travelled from?
He's travelling from San Francisco and I'm living in the UK, so that's all right.
A day you won't forget?
Yeah.
Okay. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
What do you make of this whole kind of stampede to the palace?
It's a historical moment. It's fantastic, and hi from Norway.
And where have you? You're from Norway. Okay, so were you already coming to London, or did you come to London for the coronation?
I did give a gift to my sister and mom for joining me to the coronation. I wanted to bring them to London.
And it's been said a few times that the British are best at these types of events. Now you've seen
Absolutely.
for yourself the one in real life.
None above. It's the best happening ever. It's been very good.
And what makes it so special then?
All of the pomp and all of the fun things you have in Great Britain.
And what's been your highlight other than this bit, obviously, of course?
The golden couch is also very good.
So it delivered, did it, in terms of
10 of 10.
And the shine. Excellent. We'll have a fantastic experience. Look, we're getting ever closer now to the palace. What sort of day have you had?
Oh, a brilliant day. It's been so exciting. I came last night about 3 o'clock after being in Birmingham to see a Duran Duran concert. Got on the train, got here, got to the Mall at 3
Hold on, you're winning at life. So you've seen Simon Le Bon and John Taylor, and now you're about to see the King and Queen.
Wow, it was amazing. I'm so excited.
So you haven't had much sleep then?
No, not much sleep. I got about 5 or 10 minutes, that's it. And I've just been on a high all along.
We've stopped again, so we might be as close as we can get to the balcony, but do pop back to us.
Nina, we will. Duran Duran
where
and
it's
the
at.
coronation. That's where it's at. That's a really perfect 24 hours. And it's good to see Americans and Norwegians doing the work of the British Tourism Board. So thank you very much for that. Norway. Norway, not much of a country. No reason to go there. Let's go and talk to Jonathan Dimbleby, a close friend of Prince Charles and, of course, also one of his biographers who is outside the Abbey. I don't know if we can still hear the bells. Jonathan, can I just begin with a general kind of overview? What did you make of the service?
Well, the overview is at the moment that I can hear the bells very loudly. Luckily, I can hear you. Nina had the people. I've got the bells. And it was a fascinating service. You know, the complexity of it, the symbolism of it. But where I was sitting next door. I was hearing one of your earlier contributors talking about the importance of monarchy not being complacent, king not being complacent. Spot on. The other thing is, I sat next to two people from Asda who had done amazing work during the lockdown. I sat next to the governor on the other side, the governor of the boss of the Scottish prisons. There was a big variety of people, lots of people from the Prince's Trust there. You know, I think, if I can just say this, you know, there's a big majority, always has been, in favour of the existence of the monarchy. There's always been a minority, 20–25%, usually, almost always amongst the young, not always, who either aren't interested, don't like it, and maybe have strong Republican views, to whom all respect, incidentally. But the test is twofold. One, what do you want in its place? And two, maybe what matters is how the monarch at the time does his job. And in there, in the Abbey, we heard a gospel choir, as it were, representing part of this community. He always talks about the community of communities. Gospel choir doing that. We had Bryn Terfel, who's Welsh as it happens, one of our greatest opera singers, singing absolutely beautifully. There was the Monteverdi choir. The music was sensational. So from that point of view, it was glorious. I suspect the detail, with you two describing it, was better on television than I did. Because I was watching a screen across the way, but I did have, I had the pleasure of actually being in there, which was something not to be forgotten.
You were very critical of the pledge. You didn't think it was very the kind of thing the King would really want to do, the public pledge, that is. That seemed to sort of pass off fairly painlessly, I guess one would say. For those of us who were watching, certainly in close-up, it did feel a little bit like, you know, that old cliche, heavy is the head that wears the crown. It really felt like you could see the weight of it in his face today.
I completely agree with that. I felt, as I was watching it, that this meant a huge amount to him, both in sacred terms. I mean, it's, you know, if you believe, as he does, in the Anglican faith, to have the burden of all those ceremonies imposed upon you in order to serve, which is what he wants to do, it's a pretty big burden, and it's a huge responsibility. You know, he wants to serve. You touch on the thing of the homage. Yes, I did think it was a mistake to say, I want you to come out. To say if you want to do it, and it seems to have changed over the last several hours, so that it's very clear that the Archbishop, and all strength to him, has sort of listened a bit more, perhaps, to the views of people who think, yeah, we actually want the monarchy to be effective. We want a head of the nation. We have to have a head of the nation. We have to have a head of state. We want to be effective, but we don't want to pay homage. We're in 2023. I don't know when they last. I mean, peers have paid homage, but that's all part of the ritual. I don't think the British public ever wanted to pay homage, whether they adore him or whether they don't. And I know lots of people who think he's completely wonderful. A lot of people who think he's wonderful know what he's done for the Prince's Trust, know what he's done for the environment, for global warming, all those mega issues, who aren't the kind of people who want to pay homage. I don't disrespect at all those who
Jonathan,
do. It's up to them.
Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have to just cut away because it's erupting around us as people tear towards the palace.
Yeah, just the most extraordinary images, and this is just behind our camera position here, and it's a sort of river of people flowing from the Mall around both sides of the Queen Victoria Monument, and if you can pick it up behind us here.
Running, it has to be said.
Moving at some pace. Nina is in there somewhere. Nina, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Erupting is the right word, actually. The closer we get to the Queen Victoria Memorial, the excitement just coming in waves. There's a little boy here I found. He's only 9. Say hello.
Hello.
He's carrying his own chair. What sort of day have you had?
A brilliant day.
Are you going to use the chair when you get a little bit closer to the palace, and we're nearly there now, so that you can get the best view of the King and the Queen?
Yeah.
Is it a heavy chair?
No.
Can I borrow it, or do you think you'll be using it all the time?
Be using it all the time.
You'll be using it all the time. And is this your big sister? Also carrying a chair. What sort of day have you had?
A very long one.
A very long one, yeah. I think we can all agree with that. Has it been a very good one as well?
Yes.
Excellent. What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, seeing the royal family and the king, basically.
Woo! And what do you make of this this walk, this bit of running we've done, a bit of stampeding to the palace?
It's been very hard, definitely, because like I've been standing for ages.
Yeah, it's hard on the knees, isn't it? What do you think your friends at school will say when you get back on Tuesday and say, I was here, I saw the king, I saw the queen?
They'll probably think it's pretty cool, but I'm not really sure.
You're not really sure. You're making your mind up. Okay. I mean, there are a few people in the country that feel the same, but I think you'll always have a memory, won't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely have a great memory. I tell you what, I was quite envious, I have to admit, of you being in that lovely studio that we're just coming up to. We'll give you a wave if we turn the camera around, but actually being part of this huddle as we get ever closer to the big balcony moment has been something that I certainly won't forget. Tom and Julie.
Thanks. We're trying to see if we can spy you, but things are moving too fast, I think, Nina.
Just give me a big wave.
I do feel we should be
I'm
asking
5'1",
Nina
I'm
not
sure
to
you can
steal
see me.
young children's chairs. I think that's the only important... although I noticed a lot of people have steps. I don't know how popular that's going to be for the people behind them.
Well, it's quite the view from our vantage point here as people continue to really, I mean, frankly, leg it now towards the palace.
Frankly, leg it.
But
none of the quotes today.
We've got our lovely panel joined by Mylene Class here in our studio alongside Adra and Catherine. Just to draw you into the conversation, now we've got you back here, Mylene. We were hearing from the Abbey how spectacular the music was. We were hearing it echoing from the screens here as well as listening to the service in our studio. Your snapshot take on it?
I just think that we were waiting for a showcase of British talent, and we well and truly got it. We were given 12 new contemporary compositions for the coronation, which dovetailed beautifully into traditional pieces like Handel and Parry and Walton. And it was described as something that was very well curated by the King and also his music advisors, who, by the way, have done a phenomenal job. This is James Williams and David Welton. What they have curated together has been very personal, a snapshot, if you like, of what we initially discussed as the King's playlist, pieces that mean something to him, pieces that were played at former coronations and tied to his mother at her coronations and to his father as well, with the Greek Orthodox chant that we heard.
And for all of those performers
Incredible.
today, I mean, you know what it's like to be performing on a grand stage at big moments, Mylene. The memories that, you know, some of the young choristers, and I think your godson was amongst them.
Yeah, Mylene was actually helping me take pictures of him because I was so bad at it. And but I mean, they're phenomenal. The Chapel Royal choristers. You know, he's 14 years old. He sang at the Queen's funeral as well, and they are so composed, and they're there for such a long time. Yeah. But they're so
well. The
so
skill
good.
set, and you know, it's a huge space to fill, and every note is heard in the Abbey. And when you know, initially we were talking about how disconnected the orchestra is from the choir and from the other performances, because they're, you know, spread out, if you like, around the Abbey. There's just about 200 musicians there, and when you think of the sound they make, I mean, you would think there was 1,000 of them. The arrangements have been incredible. John Rutter's done an incredible job, boiled down a lot of the arrangements to make it sound like he's got an orchestra of 1,000. And when you think of the way that that's been projected around the world, the level of talent, we saw Bryn Terfel, Priti Yende representing the Commonwealth. She came to opera and classical music very late. She actually heard an advert for British Airways, which turned out to be Lakme, the flower duet, and that's how she came to opera. And King Charles only heard her perform a year ago, and that's how it worked. He saw her and invited her. Here she is today.
I mean, it's notable that part of the Coronation Church, Westminster Abbey, is the theatre of coronation, and that's what we've witnessed. Adra, I mean, you know, you're a perfect person to speak to about that, because it is the sight and the sound, everything about today has been for spectacle, hasn't it?
You know, the time I've met King Charles has been when I've been at the RSC. He's a great lover of the arts. When he was an undergraduate, he was involved with a lot of theatre. He loved the goons, he loved sketches. So the precision of everything, as you were saying, Mylene, the precision of the music, the theatricality, the detail, it was done beautifully today, and that would have been absolutely the forefront of his mind, that everything should roll out well, because a well-performed church event speaks about the nature of the person at the centre of it, speaks about his relationship to God, his respect for the people engaged in watching him in the service. It has a whole complete function, and it speaks around the world about this country and the solemnity of the event.
And he's a musician. People forget.
Yeah.
He is a musician. We don't necessarily see him in that role. I'd love to see him play the cello again, and the piano and the trumpet. It's something that...
Down to you, Marlene. All you got to do is ask.
Working on it. That duet, I'm sure, it's just around the corner.
We'd like to be there. A huge cheer going up.
Wow.
And there we are. That's why. Here they come.
The moment many who had been rushing along the Mall had been waiting for, the balcony moment.
Carrying it off with confidence, I'd say, wouldn't you?
Some smiles at the end of a day when there have been moments where, as we've been discussing with our guests, it's been notable with King Charles, the moments when one might observe the weight of responsibility. There's Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis on the balcony.
We were just discussing in the studio here how they look quite precarious. One might be quite worried about... It feels like they've been practicing, actually, because they look pretty confident.
So the pages alongside the King and Queen who've served them so carefully and with such attention throughout the ceremonial today, and what a sight they will have from the balcony. The ranks of umbrellas as the rain pours down, and the first glimpse of the first part of a slightly shortened fly past before the red arrows. Let's just take these scenes in.
Prince George has clearly seen someone out there in the crowd. Perhaps the big screen. So we've just... Louis stealing the show. He's turning into an art form. Having seen the Apaches, here come the red arrows.
So what a moment that was. The crowds that had poured down either side of the Queen Victoria Memorial here on the Mall got their balcony moment. The King and Queen, centre, front and centre, of course. Alongside them, the pages and all those little glimpses that will be unpacked and discussed. The faces of the younger members of the family and the pages that are supporting the King and Queen. So much to talk about. Let's just get a snapshot reaction from our guests here watching this. Catherine, to you first.
Well, I mean, that final wave of his, of the King's, as he disappeared inside, it was like he'd been preparing for it all his life. I mean,
who'd have thought?
It was a Hollywood moment, but I mean, that moment also where the crowds erupted here, and it was sort of like supermarket sweep. Only that this is where it gets interesting. You know, I felt it important to bring in critical voices, but you also see people who are very, very excited by this, and so we've seen the sort of full contrast today.
What did you think?
I mean, it's just incredible hearing the band breaking into God Save the King and the crowd erupting. The last time we heard that prior was at the Abbey. It's the only time you ever see the King moving. Usually they stand to attention when God Save the King is played. And then we heard it again there for the first time with him with his crown on the head at the balcony. It's really quite moving.
Andrew.
I think I had a mixture of feelings. I was looking at all those young people. I was there is a bit of me that we've gone from the rich diversity of the Abbey to a terribly white balcony. I'm very struck by that. I'm also looking at those younger generations and thinking, what are the nuances that they will inhabit as they grow? Nuances that Charles has exhibited from a teenage into early 20s young man, thinking of the life ahead of him and thinking about the world. But that final wave was absolutely the big gesture of relief and joy.
But not final, as it turns out, because they've got an encore. It really is like the stage.
And just the two of them now, which is also...
Now I'm scratching my head. Have we ever had a balcony encore before?
No,
I should probably know the answer to that.
But we've never had a royal couple like this one, whose actual union itself has been an ongoing story for years. So I think that moment is also a very interesting one.
And the pages are swinging into action as we speak again.
Yeah. Well, the crowd, as we've heard, has erupted at various points, and Nina is right in the middle of it.
Goodness gracious me, wow, wow, wow. Some incredible moments. We just witnessed the King's encore.
Well, the speechless, absolutely speechless. Just, can't believe we're actually at the gates. How did that happen?
And the red arrows. I mean, we all got a bit emotional, I have to say, when they flew over.
Completely. I mean, I've been watching events here with my parents on the television and watched the red arrows. My dad's in the Air Force, was in the Air Force, so to see it in real life was just stunning, amazing.
I must just nod to your incredible headwear. You have got King Charles III and Queen Camilla hidden by the roses.
My wonderful florist in Yorkshire put this together for me.
Whereabouts in Yorkshire?
We're from Tickhill, which is in South Yorkshire.
Well, fabulous. They got a bit soggy, unlike the real King and Queen.
Yes, definitely. But we're strong. We're from Yorkshire. We're still standing, so we're all good.
Yeah, exactly. We're all strong in Yorkshire. Now, sir, you had bets on how close you would get in terms of for the balcony moment, and you got as close as it gets.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, mine was the losing bet. I said we wouldn't get past the screen, so I was the worst off. I think, Ollie, you had the Canadian flag?
Yeah.
Which one were you?
Well, I was all the way to the front, darling.
Of course, so yeah, I lost that one for sure.
And you had a really good seat up there. How was it for you?
It was really good, actually. I feel really happy, and basically I'm speechless, same as my mum.
You've had a great day, all of you, clearly, and just him coming out again was just a stupendous moment. Is this a reset for the country? If you are not a huge royal fan, is this enough?
Absolutely, 100%. I think he's waited long enough, and the pride we've all got to hear today and how proud he must feel. Absolutely amazing. I just want to cry. I'm just so emotional. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
The King has got the future of the monarchy in his hands. You are the younger generation, some of the younger generation not so keen on having a royal family. What did you make of today?
I think I really love him. I think he's going to do really well for us, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in the future.
And how do you feel about wearing dealy boppers live on television?
Fine.
My mum made him.
And what's been the highlight for you?
Oh, just the grandeur of it all. Well, I don't even know whether that's a word, but it's just been...
It is now.
Oh, it is now. But I think it's been a real show of what our nation is capable of, and it's also a show to the world that we keep our heritage, and I think it's incredibly important that we do keep it, and it stays here for a very long time.
We've had quite a lot of smiling in the rain as the day has gone on, and now we've heard some beautiful singing in the rain as well. I'm sure it will continue as people take in what they've seen today and absorb all these magical, magical memories.
Did a magnificent job there, Nina, I have to say. Yeah. Amongst the crowds, you've had quite the day all round, as have... all of our lovely colleagues who've just joined us in our studio. A bit of ITN royalty, of course, in Sir Trevor. What can I say? Always a pleasure. And alongside even more of that, Chris Shipp and Mary. Hi.
Hello.
I mean, what a day, Sir Trevor.
Absolutely magnificent. We've all thought about this day, and I suppose for King Charles, I mean, he's been thinking about this for some time and imagining what it could be like and, you know, going through the rehearsals and actually doing it. And then it turned out to be absolutely flawless. And that must be such a great comfort to him. And the other thing, too, is that looking at the ceremony, you get a more profound impression of what his role has to be, what he has to do. So it was now, it had been for a long time imagined. This is the reality. It's set in today. And I think it must be a great comfort to him to see, even in this slightly inclement weather, so many cheering people out here, you know, welcoming the occasion and you know, contributing really to its magnificence.
What I love about this programme is it's been so British because we've talked about the weather throughout and it just wouldn't be the same without. Chris, I feel like there've actually been two things on display today, really. One, the massive strengths of the monarchy, spectacle like no one else does it in the world, kind of world leading, we'd probably agree. Public service, actually, we haven't talked that, but, you know, but they are, you know, very focused on public service, and that's actually been evident, you know, from the people opposite here to in the Abbey and so on. We've also had reference in this studio to some of the less ideal aspects, you know, the past which they're wrestling with, the fact that, you know, as Adjua said, there was nobody who wasn't white on the balcony, and that's a degree of... How do they go forward? And the strengths are obvious. How do they deal with the weaknesses?
And you're right, it could have been so different on that balcony had Meghan stayed in the royal family and not left with Harry in the way that she did. You know, for me, for all that talk today about this sort of homage of the people and whether or not that was a command or whether it was just an invitation, I kind of thought people did it with their feet here rather than sort of did it in the church or in the Abbey. And of course, we've got a different crowd here. These are people who have chosen to be here and are therefore going to be naturally supportive of everything that's going on. I think for me, looking forward, with this new reign of King Charles is how he connects with all parts of the country and different generations, because we've had our own poll, but there's been plenty of others that have landed in my inbox this week, all about young people and not really very interested. Of course, we saw some on the Mall who were, but if young people remain disinterested in this institution, that's a problem. Going forward, and also there's, you know, different support in different areas of the country as well, and they need to sort that one out.
And we need to touch on the fact that there have been protests today.
Yes, there were protests and there were some arrests. We don't know the circumstances of it. Obviously, Republic, the campaign group, is making much of it. Are we not allowed to protest? And there is this core of 20% or more of people who don't want a monarchy. They want an elected head of state. Let's see, you know, why these people were arrested in the way that they were. But that's also a change. You know, I was in York when people threw eggs at the King. Now, no one would ever have done that for the late Queen, for example. So there are changes that we're seeing. But it's kind of like the job starts now, isn't it? The crown's on his head, and really, this is his moment to
this is reality.
Yeah, to set out his stall now.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, Mary, isn't it, that this does feel like a punctuation point, because we knew he was already king, and it was trying to sort of feel our way around what this actually was going to be today. I think was a core part of it for all of us.
Yeah.
And what you had this incredible vantage point where you were. What did you make of it?
Well, I think, like a lot of people, in advance of today, I'd sort of thought, well, what's it for exactly? And I'm sure it'd be very nice and lots to look at, but why exactly? But I think it all did somehow fall into place, and all of the details of the service that we all read about, and, you know, we did our homework, none of them really came to life until you saw it happening. And then suddenly, I don't know, did I just get overwhelmed by the majesty of it and kind of buy into it totally? Not sure. But it was really interesting, and I thought actually surprisingly uplifting.
But you'll see this, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is, I mean, you could look around us here, the amount of broadcasters that are here showing these pictures, rain or no rain, to the world.
The rain again.
This is part of our brand.
And this is the way things happen in this country. You know, I think it was Tennyson who said, you know, this is a country where faction seldom rises head. You know, things move from precedent to precedent. So, you know, these movements evolve, and it does change.
And it should change.
And it should change.
Yeah.
And in any case, it does change whether we like it or not. And so it's happened. So this is an affirmation today of one side of our history.
I tell you the other thing that I found myself really thinking about in the church is how much kind of pain has been spilled to get, like if you think of every aspect of that church service was a reflection of different aspects of our history. And here we've somehow over centuries managed to fight our way to a sort of more or less balanced constitutional democracy. And given everything that's happened in the world in the last 10 years, you kind of think, well, that's something we shouldn't take for granted.
Absolutely.
And I felt like
and King Charles is a man who has lived through so much of that change. And he's kind of apprenticed for this role for a very long time. He knows what it is. Of course, the reality now sets in, and sometimes you can see the expression on his face that, he knows what the job is about now.
Did you think he looked quite overawed by it, almost that it weighed heavy on him?
I just think if you're human, you couldn't not feel overawed by what happened there. And that moment that we didn't see because it was screened with those anointing screens, that is his moment with God. And I think, whatever you think of religion, whatever you think of monarchy, and here is that very, very moment.
Yeah.
I think you will come out of that ceremony a changed person, even if you have been training for that job as he has for 74 years.
And, going on what Mary said, I think, and I'm probably imagining this, but I think when it ended, he looked a little relieved.
Yeah.
The job is still to be done, and the profound nature of that's still to come. But I thought there was a look of relief because he seemed quite burdened by it all, and who would not be?
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
It has been a long time coming. Let's talk a bit maybe too about the elements that we picked up and discussed and chewed over, not just for days to come, for longer than that. I mean, this is also a family that has had its divisions are laid bare, aren't they, Chris? I mean, you chart that day in, day out with your work for us.
Yeah, of course. Actually, it just struck me that, within less than a year, we've now had we were here, and in fact, I was standing in amongst those crowds for the Platinum Jubilee, and the late Queen was standing on that balcony. That's less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. And you just think of all the sort of trauma this family's been through, both towards the end of her life, but also for the start of King Charles's reign as well. And, two elements of that trauma are on display today. Prince Andrew was there, Prince Harry was also there, without Meghan and his family. I mean, they had that perfect excuse, didn't they? They're not working members of the royal family, so you ain't peering on the balcony, and they didn't. And I think looking forward, I think they've just got to try and close the book on this now. The fact that Harry's here will be of immense relief to the king that both his sons were there, but
he's gone already, hasn't he? He's already on a
He's not hanging around, and he does have his son's birthday to get back to
yeah.
as well, of course, which was one of the reasons why Meghan didn't come.
Didn't you think one of the amazing things about today was seeing our history laid out in front of us, and even the recent history of all those prime ministers? My goodness, we've had quite a few, haven't we?
We've been racking them up,
haven't we? But
he's already on his second.
See them,
I guess the king's already on his second.
Yeah, exactly. But to see them all there in one place, and all those world leaders and the leaders of the Commonwealth and so on, was fascinating.
And also the foreign royal families as
yes.
well, because that is not a feature of coronations past either, is it? I mean, we have seen there have been all sorts of subtle changes, some subtle, some not so subtle, clearly, but that was one of them, wasn't it? The foreign royals attending a coronation.
And the attempt to introduce some kind of diversity, I thought that, a lot of the times it did look very white. It did look kind of like it probably did in 1953. The diversity was there. Perhaps that's something that they could have increased in some way. What did you think?
Yes, I mean, I thought they tried, and they almost copied the words of the present king about he's always talked about being more diverse, and he talked a little bit too much for some people about a community of all the faiths, and I thought there was an attempt to show some of that there today, and it's so far it worked. But as you suggest, there is a long way to go. And the one thing about it is that he's somebody he's grown up through some of these changes, and he's aware of what needs to be done. What influence he will have is questionable and so on. But you know, the problem is now out in the open, and
one he will want to
and one he will want to deal with.
And attempts have been made, and they must continue and increase and improve.
Yeah.
Well, as we can see, Nina, who has been racing around through the crowd, is still there. Nina, you've had a very energetic afternoon.
I have indeed, and so have so very many people here. I think for me, the memories of today will be all about those people, the patience they had despite the wait, the enthusiasm they had despite the rain, the optimism they had that the fly past would still happen despite the conditions, and boy, when it happened, it really did happen. A shout out as well. So many people have said to me about the friendships they've made. We often see that at events like this, and this was no different despite the weather. And also a shout out, the gratitude for everybody behind the scenes for getting this show on the road, to the street cleaners and the toilet cleaners, for the thousands of people on the Mall who've had such a brilliant time, whether they got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be here or they've been here since Monday. I mean, an incredible time for the King, but also for a huge part of this country.
Come out of the rain, Nina. It's time.
Well, since you're all professionals and we're at the end of the show and you know we're up against time, can we have a very crisp final thought from each of you about today? Mary, maybe starting with you.
Oh, my goodness. You know, we mustn't talk too much about the weather, but I think we all feared it would rain, but it rained in 1953. My mum slept out all night in 1953. She said it didn't matter. They loved it anyway, and I think they all loved it today.
I think this is the start of the job. Yes, he's been king since the death of his mother last September, but this really sets it out not just in front of the nation but the world, and this is the start for him, but also having his queen beside of him. She makes him a better king, and you could see that sort of chemistry between them throughout that service and on the balcony.
And Trevor,
I think the new king will be very pleased that the day is all over. It's been a long one. He's rehearsed for this, and he's lived, you know, what this could be like for so long. It's now over, and the real work begins.
Yeah. Well, it's been fascinating to hear your thoughts on what we've seen unfold before us. It's extraordinary, isn't it? If we wind back to when we came on air, we saw the build-up to that first procession, a much simpler affair as the King and Queen made their way to the Abbey. We knew all of those people were assembled waiting for that moment to see him arrive from that carriage. There was a little choreographical sort of mix-up at the beginning. He'd arrived a little early, but once the ceremony really began to unfold, it had been hard for us all to anticipate what we'd see.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd probably take away two things really at the end of the day. One, the Wales children do have a habit of stealing the show, how very enchanting they are. But I must admit, I was surprised by the weight of the world. And you kind of realise, as Chris was saying, as we've all been saying, you take your eye off the ball of, you know, how heavy it is in the round to wear this responsibility.
Well, with that thought, that brings to an end our special coverage of the coronation of King Charles III. It was a ceremony founded in ages past, yet aspiring to connect with modern Britain, a ceremony of majesty and holy mystery.
It has been a visible, solemn confirmation of the sovereign's contract with the people, enveloped by happy moments of contact with him along the processional route and especially here at the palace. Here then, a look back at the coronation of the King and Queen. From the two of us, a very good afternoon.
Goodbye. Our first glimpse of the King.
What a moment we're about to witness here.
there is St Edward's crown, the Coronation crown.
God save the King! God save the King! God save the King! God save the King!
Moment in history, can't be missed.
God save the King!
Here they come.